But at the end of the day, if you want to get better at something, spending more time in that position, as specific as possible. You want to get better at hangs, spend more time hanging. You want to get better at squats, spend more time squatting. Okay, hello. Today we're going to be talking about mobility training and more specifically how to increase mobility, especially if you feel stiff or just generally immobile. My name is Andrew Moore. I'm a personal trainer and movement coach based in Toronto. And my goal with this channel is to cut through a lot of the confusion that I see out there in the fitness space and try to make things as approachable and as efficient as possible. So if you like the video, please consider liking it, maybe subscribe to the channel, and let's get into it. So I think the first thing that's important to understand is that mobility at its base is about your ability to control movement through a full range of motion of a joint. If you're looking to, say, increase the depth of your squat, the main thing that you need to think about is how to increase the ability to get deeper into that squat. So there's a couple ways to do it. You can do some dynamic stretching. You can do some targeted stretching of the area that might be limited or might feel limited, and that has its place, and that's a great way to approach it. At the same time, I think the best way to increase the depth of a squat, say, or any sort of movement pattern that you're trying to improve is to just spend more time in that position. In the case of a squat, you can kind of make any alterations that you need in order to get deeper into the bottom of that squat. So that might be elevating your heels to reduce any ankle mobility restrictions. You could, widen your stance to allow, to create more space for your torso as you get down into that squat position. But you can also do other things like a box squat, either just tapping the box or fully sitting down. As you progress session after session, you might lower that box, that target that you're trying to lower yourself onto. So just a couple ways that you can kind of slowly increase that range of motion. I would also suggest doing it under load, something like a goblet squat. I think the goblet squat is probably one of the most accessible exercises for anybody, whether you're a beginner or if you're advanced. If you're a beginner, that can be the workout, the exercise that you do for your squat pattern. And if you're more advanced, I would recommend doing that as a warm-up, just to get you more opened up in the bottom of position. So if you're looking to increase mobility, the main thing is just spending more time in the position that you're trying to improve. And if you can't get there, spend more time getting yourself towards that position. So another example that I like to use is something like improving the overhead position. So for like an overhead press or even something like a pull-up. A lot of the time people are uncomfortable in that fully overhead position with your bicep right beside your ear. So I would recommend doing a couple things. So the first thing is to spend more time in the overhead position just any way you can. So full dead hangs, even assisted dead hangs. If you set up a barbell on a squat rack and then keep your feet on the ground in front of you while still getting into that position, you're going to slowly over time increase your capacity in that hang position, which will translate into the overhead position in other movements. So lat pull downs, pull-ups, but also in overhead pressing movements. So the second way to support that overhead position is actually to increase the strength in that overhead position. So even if your end goal is to do, say, a barbell overhead press, but you're having trouble getting into the overhead position, maybe you have to lean back in order to get that bar fully vertical. In that same breath, you're actually not getting the bicep beside your ear. You're kind of limited in that overhead position. I would start first with incline bench press. And as you get stronger in the incline bench press, because it's not totally horizontal, it's not vertical, it's kind of somewhere in between. It's still in a more accessible range of motion for people who have difficulty getting in the overhead position. As you get stronger in that movement, you then progress towards something like a landmine overhead press. As you do the landmine overhead press, you're still able to get strong in that position. So you can still get a good workout. You can still train. As you get stronger, you'll then be able to slowly transition into something like a dumbbell overhead press or a kettlebell overhead press. And then from there, get to a barbell overhead press. And the reason I would say that's the kind of most challenging version is just because with a single arm overhead press, with a dumbbell, kettlebell, the landmine overhead press is inherently a single arm movement. In all of those movements, there's more freedom of movement in the shoulder. So even if you're doing a 2-arm dumbbell overhead press, you've got a dumbbell in each hand. Any sort of restriction that might, with a barbell, cause you to kind of emphasize one side, so say push with your more dominant side, you can mitigate that and still increase strength globally, but also address any sort of imbalance that might be there. Thinking about mobility as strength training, essentially, the stronger you get in a position, the more more you'll be able to control that position in everyday life. A great example, say, is if you have to put your luggage in the overhead compartment on the plane. If you feel restricted in that overhead position, and if you don't feel super strong in that position, then that's going to feel really tough to do. So I've actually worked with clients who have said that since training the overhead press, they don't feel nearly as intimidated in actually putting their luggage in the overhead compartment. So I found that to be a great real world implementation of the increase in mobility, but also strength through a full range of motion. Now, when I work with people and we're trying to increase some sort of range of motion, just general mobility, we will spend a lot of time at the beginning of a session doing general dynamic warm-ups, windshield wipers, 90-90s, some sort of more unilateral hip stretches, cat-cows, even, dead hangs, stuff like that. And that's all great to get the body primed, get your mind into your body, getting ready for the workout. But at the end of the day, I think the real kind of meat and potatoes of mobility training comes from the strength aspect. So if you're even doing something like animal flow, I consider that to be strength training. It's a little lighter than, say, a barbell squat or a Romanian deadlift or a barbell overhead press, but you're still working on the stability of your hips, your ankles, your shoulders, and of course your core has to link everything together. So your core is getting stronger. All of those will actually translate into general strength training as well. There is obviously a time and place for more body weight movements, but eventually as you get stronger, you will have to load it up a little more. And that's where movements like the goblet squat or barbell squat in a squat context come in handy. And just one last thing I want to mention before I end the video is Romanian deadlifts. A lot of people have very tight hamstrings. If you spend a lot of time sitting, your knee is kind of in a constantly flexed position. Constant exposure to that position makes it uncomfortable or at least difficult to get into a stretched position in the hamstrings. When you do get into something like a Romanian deadlift or even a deadlift or even just bending over to pick something up off the ground. So a Romanian deadlift is a great exercise to help increase hamstring mobility as long as you treat it like a mobility exercise. You may find in the course of a set, you'll be able to get a little deeper as your hamstrings kind of loosen up, but also over time, as you get stronger, as you add weight, as you continue to do it over the course of a few sessions, you'll probably find that you'll be able to get deeper just naturally. As long as you approach it with mobility training in mind, you should find that over time, you'll increase capacity to get deeper into that movement. And that's sort of the ultimate idea here, is that if you want to get better at something, spend more time doing it. Again, there's ways to support it through stretching and warming up and different drills. But at the end of the day, if you want to get better at something, spending more time in that position as specific as possible. You want to get better at hangs, spend more time hanging. You want to get better at squats, spend more time squatting. That's sort of the basic point here. So that was a bit all over the map. It's kind of a bit of a ramble, but I've been thinking about that stuff a lot lately because it comes up a lot in sessions with my clients. So if you like that video, please like and subscribe. And if you have any thoughts about what I said, please let me know in the comments down below. And that's the video for today.